community. One of the ways that is perhaps very obvious is through those who come for baptism, if that is within your tradition, coming from the Anglican Church. And in my particular church in Teddington, we have a lot of families who come for baptism. Now, sometimes the church kind of goes, oh, they've only come to get their child baptized. I'd want to go, they've come to get their child baptized. How can we now provide a way of keeping the promises that we as congregation make to baptism families, that we will support you, we will be a place where you are welcomed? The church that I go to in Teddington is not perfect. I like to pretend it is, but it's not. But we began to realize that we weren't really offering a safe space, particularly for parents of very young children, to be part of a regular worshipping community. And so we came up with what we call the 9 o'clock service. And this is just a little insight into what happens. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to offer a way into the congregation. You can tell we're a fairly traditional church. We do like our processions, we do like our robes, we do like our way of doing things. So the service is the same every week. It has a ritual that means people know where they are. It's very short, 25 minutes at the most. And it has something for adults as well. It's never titled a children's service. It is there to help feed both adults and children. We've got some older members of our congregation who've made it their service. It's one of our ways of helping to bridge between our very tiny toddler service in the middle of the week and the wider church community. One of the other things that we need to think about is how are we loving and serving those young families? What is it in our particular context? And it will be different in whatever part of Scotland or wherever you're beaming in from. Your context will be different to perhaps the next door congregations. So we need to think about what is it that our young families need? Is it something to eat? Is it a safe place to go? Is it people who will reassure them that they're being okay parents, they are being good enough parents? And we do that by showing them God's love, by welcoming them, by giving them the best that we can possibly manage, good cake, good sandwiches, if that's what we're doing, by recognizing and talking with children and not just adults. As we talked to the people that took part in this research, these are some of the things that they said to us. They wanted church-based toddler groups to be distinctively Christian. So those parents, even if they didn't have a faith, said things like, well, I'd expect the church to be mentioned as a church toddler group because it's in a church. We also had somebody who said, I'm a Buddhist. Being at a church and being at a Christian group isn't the problem for me. I don't feel it's imposed. I am welcomed with open arms. I like the Christian parts of the group, and I take it as a cultural rather than religious experience. Somebody else said, at first I was a bit about going to a church group. I was worried it would be pushed at me when I wasn't ready for it. I think perhaps sometimes we need to remember that actually taking a step into a church hall or a church is a big thing for some people. But this particular participant said, then I came along and now I've been baptized and started going to church. So being distinctively Christian with early years and families is important, helping them to see the story, to hear the story, to experience the story, to offer alongside all the other things that we might have in a toddler group, Bible stories and prayers and songs with a Christian theme to them. And we also found that toddler groups were often a place where parents and carers rediscovered their faith. They said things like, coming here opened up the opportunity to restart a relationship with God. It's good because it gets me involved too and takes me back to my Christian roots. Going into church reminded me of going to Sunday school. It was comforting and had a familiarity about it, like coming home. I think in those terms of the story that Jesus told about the prodigal son who was welcomed back with open arms by his father, who didn't ask, where have you been and what have you done with my money, but just said, welcome home. And then there are times, and it doesn't always happen, of course it doesn't always happen, there are times when that faith journey results in people doing alpha courses, becoming part of the church community, planning messy church and feeling part of the family. Those are incredible things. Whether a toddler group is large or small, it offers maybe a bridge into the bigger community of the church. We also found, and again, one of the actions I believe that's going to come after this is specifically about faith at home. We found parents and carers asking for ways to take what they'd heard back home. So they were asking things like craft activities or ideas to start conversations around what they'd heard. Some of them were asking for the words of the songs that their children sang because they couldn't remember them when they got home. Their children wanted to sing them at bedtime. Some of them wanted very simple prayers that they could use. So offering those ways into taking further that sense of faith are really important. And then 2 is thinking about how we link our churches and our communities. You stop and think about the things that happen in your church community. There are many ways into working alongside and with young children and their families. There are the christenings and the baptisms. There are some places which will have messy church or toddler praise. Who Let the Dads Out is a fantastic way of celebrating fatherhood and giving dads a chance to be together and realize they don't have to be the perfect dad. They need to be a good enough dad. Sometimes it might be the situation we're in that we need to think about baby banks, baby basics, food programs, offering something that will help to alleviate some of the instances of poverty in our communities. But also, how do we celebrate our festivals? How do we help the great occasion of our faith, harvest, of Christmas, of Easter? How are early years children included in that? Or do we just go for the things that will attract adults? And then maybe we need to think about how in our communities we could get people who would commit to pray. Perhaps those who are unable to go out at the moment or who are still feeling vulnerable, who are still not willing to be part of a group, but who could pray, who could commit to pray even just for 5 minutes in a week for toddler groups or for young children and for their families. And then we begin to see the links between our church community, our local community, and those toddler communities. On the Evangelical Alliance's website, there's a fabulous little video, which we're going to look at now, of a Methodist church and a leader who talks about how she started her toddler group and what they get up to. And it's so much more than just that. Well, it's so much more. It is about showing the love of God in so many different ways.
That first problem was myself, and it was that fear of people are not going to go. There was a lot of concern because we were using Christian content that we might offend somebody. But for 20 years I've been doing this now, and not once has anybody ever said to me, I'm really offended, so I'm not coming back.
So I started to come on a Wednesday and a Friday, and then I noticed that they were going to start doing a special thing with a Christian message on a Monday. So I thought I'd turn up for that as well.
It's just a really nice, friendly group. You get everyone chatting to each other. The children absolutely love it. They talk about it all the time. They have, it's called Big God to our kids because of the song that we sing. That's their group. Obviously, it's called See and Know, but the children know it as Big God Play Group, and they love it. They look forward to it.
The toddler group is just basically like any other toddler group. There are toys, so the children can have free play to begin with. Parents can get drinks. Then about halfway through the session, we ring a little bell, and that is a sign that it's God's time. So know it's built around a framework of very simple nursery rhyme type songs. And there's 4 songs. There's a bell song where you ring a bell, the children come and sit down with the parents, carers, grandparents. And then there's a welcome song where we welcome each child as an individual. We sing to them, we shake their hand, because God welcomes us. He knows our name. He welcomes us as individuals, and that's what we would like to do with the children. We welcome them as individuals. There is then a story time session. Then there is Bible song as well. So we introduce the Bibles to the children. We put boxes of Bibles out. The children come and run to get the Bibles, literally running to get hold of the Word of God. And then there is a prayer song at the end where we pray. We thank God for what we have, who He is, and how much He loves us. And then there's always a craft. There's a craft that links into the story that the children do with the parents and carers, and then you can take that home as a witness within their own home.
There's more structure to it, which I think is quite good. So like the children know what's going to happen, after each one. So some of the playgroups I've been to, and they're literally just playing all the time, whereas they play for a little bit and they know that it's singing time and story time. So George enjoys the structure.
They love the sing-along time and the dance time. They absolutely adore it. Oliver thoroughly through it. He can't wait when he gets up on a Monday morning. That's it. He's so excited.
I've got so many incredible stories of how God can work through just a parent and toddler group. The one that instantly springs to mind was a lady called Julie who was living away from her family, but she was with a partner in our town, and she was very lonely. She didn't know anybody in the area, and one day she just happened to be walking past when we had our session on and saw all the prams outside and came in to find out what was going on. And then she kept coming back each week, and long story short, she made a commitment to Jesus. She went back to a partner. They got married. They are part of the church. She started doing the children's work. They had another baby. That whole family's life has been changed just because one day she happened to walk past a parents and toddler group, and she came in and she heard how special she was and how much God loved her. And the God of relationship gave her the relationships that she needed. If you're already running a toddler group and you don't use Christian content because of that fear, and that fear can stop us from doing these things, do you know what? Do it anyway. Don't be frightened. We're in a church building. They're coming to a church building. They're expecting God in one way or another. We've had just recently, this past 2 weeks, we've had one of our new mums who's come along, loved it. Can I have my baby baptised? Yes, of course you can. So, never, ever underestimate what can happen in a parent and toddler group, because, God's there before you. He's done it. And those children matter more to Him than they do to us.
That sense of relationship as a pretty big toddler group, but not all of us can manage those. But even toddler groups that just have a few parents and children, carers and children together, can offer that sense of relationship. Mary Hawes, who is an early years specialist in the States, talks about the fact that the experiences of toddlers can prove to be long-lasting frameworks on which they base their perceptions of reality, perceptions which can and need to include God. But that puts the responsibility on us to create contexts in which our faith is normalized. You don't have to feel embarrassed about saying, well, it's a church group, but we do this because God loves us and we love you. We need to point the way to not thrust things down people's throats, but to say to them, oh, I don't know if you knew, we've got a family service that happens at this time. We have we have people who meet together at this place. Just pointing them to the fact that there are other ways that they can engage with church, to share the stories and give direction to help those toddler experiences transform who they are in those early developmental stages. Isabel mentioned the 1277 Facebook group at the start of this. Is a fantastic group, if you've not found it yet, for looking at young children and their families. One person on there said, oh, I was asked by somebody what I did, and I said, I run the toddler group. She said, oh, you run the toddler group. Nice. She said, but actually today, we provided a fun, safe space for 40 children and carers. We wiped the tears of children and adults. We dealt with 3 first aid incidents. We celebrated as one child took their first aid. We filled in a universal credit form with a mum whose life is falling apart. We counseled a mum whose child refused to eat for 5 days, then hugged her as we watched her toddler wolf down 2 pieces of toast with the other children. We gave out a food parcel to a family in need. We tried to advise another new mum on getting baby to sleep. We spread the gospel. Yeah, we just run the toddler group. And we'll do it again tomorrow. Toddler groups, places where young children and their families and carers can experience God and God's love for them, are hugely important. We need to make sure that that treasure is not just treasured by those of us who work in that area, but by the whole of the church. They see it as part of our whole mission. After this, Isabel will send you some details of places to go to, but I just want to run through one or two. So the 1277 website is there, which talks about those important days from birth to nursery. How can we as Christians help make the most of them and help provide a good start in life that includes knowing about God and God's love shown in Jesus? June, few weeks' time, the National Month of Prayer, where we encourage congregations who may not have many young children in them to pray for children. Flame Creative Kids is an amazing blog spot which will offer you a whole range of activities that have some spiritual content in them to bring alive some of the stories. And Victoria Beach with God Venture is just incredible in the ways that she helps to bring faith into the home. So, early years. If you'd asked me 15 years ago, I'd have said, nah, ministry with and among children starts when they go to school. I have been totally converted about the fact that from the earliest days, our children need to know that they are loved by God through what they experience and how we love them. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you so much, Mary. Gosh, what a lot. Yeah, what a lot we've had there, from spirituality of young children, the marks of mission and how we can live that out and what that looks like for our church and community with young families, the huge significance of working with children and young families, whether or not they're with us in our Sunday services. So how can we be that net? Is it just the toddler group? Are they just under 5s, just playing? There was a great quote in that research that Mary commissioned that I'll just read out now before introducing the next speaker. Toddler groups give the church the opportunity to impact and transform individual lives of families and entire communities. And I think we've seen that and we've heard about the potential for that from what Mary's shared and that video and some of the examples. So how are our toddler groups? How's our work with children and young families, the net? How can we throw that net wider and deeper and be more effective in our ministries? Well, we'll go on to explore some of that. But I'd like to just introduce Elmer now. Sorry, I just need to, to come in and join us, Elmer. Elmer's up in Deeside, in the Deeside Christian Fellowship, and Elmer and his wife are the family and community leaders there. And I had a conversation with Elmer a couple of months ago, and I was really struck about how they very intentionally grew their work into the community with children and young families, and how it may have made a small start, but it's grown and developed. And so we'd love to hear a little bit about your journey and the story that your church has had in its work with families and young children, Elmer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be here. And yeah, probably everybody has different stories to share with everybody else as well. How our toddler groups are part of the community, and how they are very just a focal point to connect with our neighbors. I joined the staff at the church, Deeside Christian Fellowship, about 8 years ago. And part of my job was to be the community worker. And we had a very successful toddler group with maybe 60 to 70 families every week. And the number was huge, too many people to have there and to have meaningful conversations. So as we tried to grow the conversations in a godly way, I came across mainly music, and we thought that would be the next step as a way to bring more the spiritual aspect to the groups. So we started mainly music. Barbara's here, and she led us the first steps as we started the group in the church. And mainly music has a more intentional focus to share through the music the message of the gospel. So there are Christian songs about creation, about Jesus' love, and all of that, and the actions. And they're great tunes as well, and the parents really enjoyed. So from 60 families that we had in the other group, we reduced to mainly music with 15 families perhaps. And that was the more doable environment to have conversations with families about God. My desire was to connect with people, to talk to people. I'm not a great public speaker. I'm not a preacher. I'm not that kind of person. So, but I like to be the one-on-one. And through the ARC, which is the bigger toddler group, and mainly music, I started to develop connections with families, especially parents who came with boys, because boys tend to gravitate towards me, and I just enjoy playing with them. And I learned as well that the toddler groups is about the children. It's not just about the adults that we have a chance to share the gospel with, but it's about the children. So I just, went on my knees and played with Lego and cars with the boys, and good connections developed there. And my next step was to, what do you do now? I'm from Peru originally, and my culture came into that, into the picture. And I said to one of the families, would you like to come to my house one day, with your wee boy and your husband, and we can play there, and we can go for a walk and have a coffee. So to my surprise, and to the surprise of many in the church, they say, oh, they're coming to your house. Yes, they are coming to my house. I'm going to have tea and we'll play with the children. So I've done a few of those connections, and not everybody's coming to church on a Sunday after coming to my house, but the connection is there, the relationship is there, and I see them when the kids go to school. They walk through the car park of the church. I'm there, and I visit the families, and there is a good relationship there. And they come to special events of the church, Easter, Christmas, Mother's Day, and so on. So that was mainly music that gave us perhaps a more scope to be more Christian in a sense, and be open about the toddler group in the church. Then who led the Dancehall? came as well into the radar, and we started a group for dads. Again, people were skeptical. You know, dads, men don't do social things. They don't like to get together. But we started, and we have grown as well. From started, now we have 20 dads that come regularly once a month and with their children, and we play, and we've connected with single dads there. There are a few in the group who, you know, they're separated, they have the kids only the weekend, you know, or they work long hours in the week, so they don't have time to be with the children in the week. So and again, especially during the lockdown, we connected with those single dads, and we send them pizza kits so they could bake the pizza at home with their children, and they really appreciated that, you know, that touch from the church, that we were thinking about them, and we enabled them to have a bit of fun one night during the lockdown. I would say as well that a very important factor is that we don't do this. The evangelistic effort takes the whole church to do it effectively. And when we connected with some of these families, it's more than just me doing it, and it's more than just one individual trying to connect with one person, with one family. There's been an example of 2 families, especially in the church, where this is through the Who Let the Dads Out. A few of the dads made connections with these individuals, and they invited them to their social things, birthday parties, and so on. And you know, they come to church now. These 2 dads and their families. But it took a few of us to be involved with those individuals and offer in different ways, different things. You know, come to my house, or go for a walk, or let's play at the weekend. So it's a team effort if we want to be effective as well in our evangelism. So, you know, perhaps you have more exciting stories to tell, but I just love the opportunity to connect with individuals one-on-one. I know that the culture in Aberdeen is very reserved, and it's not always easy to connect with people at a deeper level, but we are trying to break around there. We offer as well different courses. Care for the Family provides a variety of courses to offer to families. We've done the Let's Stick Together, which is for parents of young children. It's one morning. We've done it on a Saturday morning. We provided breakfast. We provided a creche, and we did the class just over an hour. It's not a long course, and yeah, many people from the community came, and through that as well we made connections. So this is just a little of my experience in the Toddler Group. It was a new world for me to be involved in this with this age group, but I love it. And as I said, the fact that I'm there on a Tuesday, on a Thursday, when most families it's just mostly moms that come, or female carers. And when they see me, especially the boys, when they see me there, there's a natural connection there, and it's very important to have that male influence as well in those groups, because just the way that things are at the moment, with all this confusion and families separated and all of that, it's good to have, for me to be there, and I love it. And so, but I think it's being honest about who you are, being natural. That, you know, what did you do the other weekend? Well, I came to church, and I got to church on a Sunday, and like people talk about the weather and diets freely and openly, I feel that we should tell as well what we did at the weekend and why we do it and all of that. And showing them love. And, we hear from Mary that sometimes we don't want people to come to a toddler group in the church and think, is this a Christian group or what is it? I think people need to hear that in the church, we believe in God, we love God, and we serve people because we love them as well as Jesus. So, this is my story as well. This is my story.
Thank you so much, Elmer. Thank you for sharing your passion. Actually, it's more than your story. It's your story, but it's also the story of your church. It's how things started small and one thing led to another. It's building up those relationships and building up the connection with the wider church. But thank you. It's a great story. And I'm sure many of you have similar stories. I'm just putting some questions into the chat because we're going to go into breakout groups now. But I think as you think about your breakout groups, rather than just talking about what you're currently doing, if you could have that slight image of that net and think, how might you be throwing the net into the other side of the boat? What new things, what new opportunities might there be that are achievable? What might you want to kind of share and discuss in your groups? So you've got groups of about 5 or 6 people, and you've got 15 minutes to discuss what's going on, the significance, the importance, the opportunities that there are with toddler groups and their families, and how to build that connection within the church and its outreach into the community. So have a really good conversation. And then just a reminder that we've got the plenary after that, and there's a chance to kind of bring back any questions, any other stories or examples of things that you've heard in your groups or opportunities that you'd like to kind of explore a little bit further. So have a good conversation. And by magic, everybody disappears.